So I'm John Mustak. I'm here with Matt Barnier. Thanks for joining us. Gosh, I think it was May. Here we are in July. So back in May.
That long already.
That long already. So thanks for those. We had heaps of people on in May, and we had a fantastic response from people wanting to know more about the analysis of reporting data out of Service Manager, and how do you look at that, and how do you start making some meaningful decisions about things that you need to take action on. So what we've done is we've made some further charts to the Power BI report, and we'll have a look at that. And so it gives us an opportunity in this session to go a little deeper into some areas that you can have a look at, and hopefully you'll find it interesting and of use. So certainly use the chat board if you want to ask any questions, and if we've got time we'll work those answers into the session. We've only got 30 minutes tops, so anywhere between 20-30 minutes today. So again, appreciate your company. All right, so let me get into this view. So what we're looking at here, Matt, so here we've got the dashboard on the Power BI report. Now just for you guys watching, what I've configured here is what's called the Power BI app. So in Power BI, you'll create a report, and so the report tabs you can see down on the left-hand side of that screen, and there's a dashboard, but you can migrate or you can publish your Power BI report then up into what's called a Power BI app. And the app actually makes it a lot easier for your audience to consume that report. And this is the experience here. We're looking at the Power BI app. And equally, you can install Power BI on your phone, and you can have a look at apps on your phone. And all of these reports that you develop them, you can make sure that they look good on a phone real estate. So I'd encourage you to check out the Power BI app, and it's what we'll be using here. Now the dashboard, the purpose of the dashboard is really just to bring chart elements that exist within the different reporting pages onto a single pane of glass, so that you have a quick look at those elements that are meaningful to stakeholders or others, rather than fishing through various charts, various report pages. So here we've got a dashboard that gives headline elements of service request, and then headline elements of incidents. So the left-hand side is all about requests. We can see that we've got 7,000 plus requests that are currently active. We've got 363 that are in error. We can have a look at that pie chart is showing us how much of the service catalogue is being used. So you'll see there that we've got a large part of that chart, which is what, about 50% of that chart, 40% of that chart, which is blank. So that means that those blank request offerings are being generated either through email or through the console from analysts creating those. So we've got about 60% of the active requests that are coming through the service catalogue. Now that's not a bad result, and you probably want to then have a look at some trending analysis to see whether as a business you're moving into a higher proportion, whether you're trending up in the use of the catalogue.
I'd probably dig into the blanks, and I'd also dig into the off-catalogue request, because the off-catalogue request is generally something you put in the catalogue that says, I can't really see what I want here, so I'll just create an off-catalogue request because I can't see it, and then I'll get it dealt with. So putting the two of those together represents a fair proportion of things either people aren't finding or they're just coming straight to the service desk and the analysts aren't looking at the request properly and choosing the right request. So digging into the two of those and getting some understanding would help you build out your catalogue in the future as well.
That's a good point. Some of the other items, just at this headline dashboard level, so we have a look at incidents, and I suppose, you know, at a headline level for incidents, it's really around performance. What I think makes sense is looking at performance, so your SLO performance, and then your classification of incidents and how that's running. So, but they're just sort of key headlines at that dashboard level. So, excuse me, what we'll do is dive into some of these reports, and we'll start off with the request report. Now, some of these things you might recall from last session that we had a look at. Now, one of the interesting things about, I'll have a look, I'll go to this second page in the request chart, is the age of requests. So this is a particularly, we had some questions about this following on from the last webcast that we did. So what I've done here is change this report to show some structured aging of service requests. And so in this example, you can see that, you know, we've got 5,000. So these are active requests. So we've got about 5,000 active requests that are over 60 days old. So from when they were created, they haven't completed yet, and they're over 60 days old. And we've got others that, you know, we've got about 1,000 that are between 14 and 30 days old. You'll notice we've got nothing in there that's less than 14 days old. So, you know, it kind of says that things that get done quickly, but then for whatever reason, we're getting these requests that just get old. You know, I'm betting from this that all of the stuff in 14 days will go into 30, will go into 60, will go into over 60. So there's a block there that just seems to get old.
And you want to drill into that too, the 5,000 odd open requests, and see what they are. Are they same type of requests? Because I was working with a client the last few weeks, and one of the things that we found was they have a particular type of request. We found 1,400 open requests of this one particular type, and it was to do with picking up ID cards. So you need ID cards that you do your request, you get an ID card issued, you go to the security desk, you pick it up, you sign for it, you get your ID card, and off you go. Well, the security people are meant to then click that manual activity that says, I've now given them the card, we're all done, and they weren't doing it. So these requests just kept queuing up. The cards are being handed out, everybody's got them, but the net result is we've got 1,400 open requests that are aged that shouldn't be. So there's a training exercise there that we need to train the security people to say, when you hand out your card, close off the activity, or somebody in the admin side of the tool needs to be sitting there monitoring those things and saying, well, what's going on? I'm sure we don't have a box with 1,400 cards waiting for people to collect. So, you know, what's the issue here? And that would drop us down by, 1,500 straight away. So things like that could be very easily picked up and dealt with and make this a lot tidier.
Well, and that's a good point, because, you know, in Service Manager, you know, in particular service requests, you can, depending on how you've structured your activities, you can certainly get to the point where you've provisioned the whole request, but the final activity hasn't been done. And I know that...
And our SLAs could be a mess too, because if we have an SLA of, say, 7 days from a card request to generate a card and get it delivered to you, well, we've blown them, 1,500 of them. So what's the point of having an SLA if we're not following the process?
Yeah. And in this example here, I'm sure that, these 5,000 requests that are over 60 days old, I'm sure that they've been provisioned. I mean, otherwise you'd have 5,000 customers knocking on your door and saying what's going on. So there's, as you say, there's likely to be a process element here. I'd be looking at the activity structure. It might benefit from some automation there, maybe to, if people aren't closing out manual activities, gosh, sure, you can train them, but, we know that that's a hard thing. So where you can use some
We can put
smart...
some automation in there that says things like, so if it's a question of picking something up or doing something, if it's in that state for greater than 30 days, then we're going to assume it's done and we're going to close it out. Because it could just be a last step of, it arrives in the post, gets delivered to their desk, and, it depends on the request. But it's a good way of at least managing it. Or drive out a reminder email that says, look, this has been sitting here now for 30 days and you still haven't closed it out, and we just start annoying them and keep doing that to them until they close it.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that that happens is, and it's here in this summary. So in this example, we've got 300 plus requests that are in error. And so, one of the challenges you have is, how do I start? What do I do about it? How do I start?
And firstly, what does error mean? So in Service Manager, error means that we either didn't get an approval, so we asked someone for an approval and they said, no, I'm not approving that. So we've got a rejected request that needs to be dealt with. And typically the analyst group or the service desk would say, okay, why was it not given approval? Do I now cancel it out? Do I, deal with the issue that he didn't like and resubmit it, or what do we do? It could be a runbook that's failed. It did some automation. It didn't work. It could have been a manual activity. I asked you to go and do this to the servers, and you found that you couldn't do it, so you marked the activity as failed because you couldn't do that. It could be impacting something else. So we need to understand why are they in error and what do we do about that. We've got a few alternatives there too. Typically, the one where you've got a busy desk, people reject things, they'll just sit there in failed ad infinitum. So you might want to put a rule in or a simple workflow in Orchestrator that says, so if I see a request that's gone into failed because it didn't get an approval and it's been sitting there for over 30 days, I'm going to assume you don't want this, it's been rejected, I'm going to cancel it out and get rid of it. And then we automatically start trimming these things back rather than relying on analysts to go and do it all for us.
Yeah.
But runbooks, you might say, well, why not notify the person that developed the runbook? The runbooks have that area there that says designer. If you put the designer in there of the person or the team that's responsible for that runbook, and if it fails, notify that team.
Oh, wow.
And make them responsible for looking at that runbook to say, why did it fail? Rerun it, fix it, improve the runbook, and say, well, self-heal. Next time that happens, heal yourself, fix the issue that's not there, or raise an incident because you couldn't do something. Then we're going to start getting the management to the right places for these things.
Well, and that's a really good point. That's a really good point because, we have some clients that, if your activity process gets complex and you're engaging a whole lot of other teams in your service request, but yet the guy who is the analyst on the parent service request might be the level 1 service desk. And like you say, he's got a bazillion things to do, and he may not know what to do with a failed runbook.
Yeah, if you've got a queue there and they look at a view and it's got 40, 50 failed runbooks sitting in it, and he opens one of them up and looks at the runbook log. And if you're writing your runbooks well, and if something fails, you're going to track that and put that into the error log. So you've got a good message there in the error log of actually what happened. And typically you might be running some PowerShell. Say, now the problem is if it's an analyst and they came out of uni 6 months ago, or they're a fresh graduate, they don't really know, and they see this runbook and they look at the log and there's a big slab of PowerShell errors that have come out of the script and they've been bolted in there. He looks at it and just glazes over and says, I don't know. Let's tell the people that designed that runbook, so let's use the designer field and let's get a notification to the designers. Let's put them in their queue of things they need to address and give an incident to hang that off as well. So we can very easily, on a failed runbook, raise an incident to be dealt with. And then it's tracked and managed and it's all handled correctly.
That's a great idea.
And if it's an important service request and that runbook's failing, then that incident that gets raised against it perhaps should be a P2 incident. So we've got the right tracking around it.
Yeah. Well, one of the charts that I've added here is a table that says for those requests that are in error, actually show me which activity has failed. So, the useful thing here is, instead of needing to open up each service request and have a look at it, you can have a table like this that says, okay, here are all the failed service requests. Here are the activities that have failed. And I can look at that and say, well, well, is there an obvious trend here? I've got a...
Can I see that?
Yeah. So is there an obvious difference here that says, well, the provision how to activity is failing, so maybe there's something wrong with that. But so it's a way of using a report to bring out some more information to just help you, figure out what you're doing.
A nice enhancement to this would be also to group them together to say how many of these are runbook fails, how many are approvals that haven't been given, how many are manual activities that failed. Because we, like some of the systems we've done, where we go out to an external system and ask it to go and do something, it may take not seconds, it may take minutes, it may take hours, it may take days to go and finish provisioning. So what we might do is have that system come back and click and close the manual activity for us by a script when it's actually done. So we can pick those things up. So if that external system failed and didn't do its job, we can't use a runbook there because the runbook can initiate it, but the runbook's not going to wait for 3 days while that external system does it. That's where we use the manual activity after it. So when it finally completes, it will come back and close our manual activity. And if it didn't work, it can fail it. And that can pick up there. So that's a good way we can now track external systems and external procedures coming back saying that they've completed, or pick up that we've got a problem with our batching system or our control M monitoring systems or whatever other external system it is. We can help pick up those sort of issues from this as well.
That's a really great idea, and I suppose, look, the challenge for customers who are using Service Manager is to figure out these finer points, to wrap around their existing processes.
You can't manage what you can't see. Right?
Well, sure.
So if they're just a big bucket, like you said, there are 300 errors. Like, well, what's that mean? What were non-approvals? What were failed runbooks? What were external systems that failed doing their jobs? What were tasks that people couldn't get done? We need to understand those things. Then we can break that down, combine that with the type of request we're getting, and understand that, well, considering the patterns here, this external system's got an issue, or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
And also engage, with say, like I said, with the runbooks, engage the team that wrote the runbook for a self-improvement exercise. So if it fails, rather than dealing with the failed situation, guys, improve the runbook so it deals with itself, or raises an issue or raises an incident that we can get that actual problem root cause dealt with, and so that we don't keep getting it happening. I've seen some done where, a runbook might go and try and add somebody to an Active Directory entry. And, it works nicely, but what they've done is they've said, so if the person exists in the Active Directory already, fail the runbook. The problem is that then puts the onus then back on the service desk to say, well, somebody requested I be added to an Active Directory group. It found I was already there, so it's failed the runbook. And I go, well, what do you want me to do? Yeah, you're in the group, great. You just cancel out the request. Why not automate that? Why not do it automatically? Why do I need to fail it and deal with it manually? It's just, if you're already in the group, great. I'm just going to mark the request as completed, but I'll put information in there to say you were found to be already in the group, and however I want to deal with it. Because I want to take away those manual steps.
Okay. So we've got, so the other piece that I wanted to look at was around activities. So, activities, in particular, review activities, because, review activities are, in this particular example, we've got aged approvals. In this example, we've got 741 that are over 600 hours.
14 days. 14 days.
Yeah, 14 days. Yeah.
741 approvals sitting out there that are over 14 days old, and looks like Richard Red is one of the major culprits.
Bloody Richard.
326 approvals sitting on his desk waiting for him to do them. So he either needs some training or he's not sure what to do, but certainly a conversation with Richard would be worthwhile at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's right. So, and the interesting thing about this, and one of the nice things about Power BI is just the connection between all the charts. So, you know, we might have a look at, you know, Peter Purple, he's got 23 that are waiting. We can see that he's not such a, not suffering from, not too much of a culprit. We can see...
It could be on holidays or something like that too, right?
True, yeah. But certainly, you know, if we were to look at, only these that are aged, everyone here, all of the approvers are guilty of having some of these really old requests, as distinct from...
and some of these though, too, you're looking at approvals here in general, not approvals for a service request. So they could be approvals for a change request, and some of those could have valid reasons for waiting. It could be, well, I'm not going to approve this until the hardware's arrived because it'll start moving through, or I need to get my financial approval. So I've got, you know, I'll do my approval once I've got my submission done, I've gone to the board, I've got my money approved, and then I'll come back and I'll approve it to continue. But if the board says no, I'm going to reject this request, and we go from there. So some of them could be valid and some of them might not be valid. But that's where, if you look at that, I'd almost be inclined to say what you could probably do with here would be a reminder system on your renewals, on your approvals, to say, so I'm for a particular class of approval, perhaps not change requests, but for, say, typical request like a manager's approval, I'm going to give you 30 days. I'm going to remind you after 7 days, and then I'm going to remind you in another 7 days. I'm going to remind you every 2 days that you still haven't approved this. And after 30 days, I'm going to then cancel out the request because obviously you're not going to do anything about it. Or you could escalate it. I could say, well, if you're not going to do anything about it, I'm going to swap you out. I'm going to bring your manager in as the approval and then let them know. And if that keeps happening, somebody's going to come along and say, why do all of your approvals keep coming to me after 30 days? Do your job. So, you know, there's ways to get people to do their jobs, and it's just a case of getting that into the accepted process and practice of the business.
Yeah, and I suppose, you know, coming back to the report, you know, charts like this help you understand, well, what's going on? You know, is it a particular person like Richard that's our issue here, or might it be a process? You know, might it be a team that, you know, doesn't even recognise that they need to approve things?
Well, and sometimes too, I've certainly been involved, I'm sure you have over the years, where you might have sent an invoice to somebody and they've never seen an invoice before and they're scared because it's money, so they just put it on the bottom of the pile and don't worry about it, instead of actually providing the approval and letting it move through. And it's not until it gets chased up. And some of these people, I didn't know I was supposed to approve it. You go to the screen, it shows you what you're meant to approve, so it shouldn't be that hard, but they might have assumed other people have done it. But certainly, it's designed to highlight where do we need to look, who do we need to talk to, and what do we need to do to start improving the throughput of our system and get this information meaningful. Not have these anomalies that sit there saying it's been here for 6 months, and people look at it and go, well, if that's rubbish, maybe the rest of it's rubbish too. We want this fine-tuned, handled, and coming down to reasonable timeframes, and just agree with the business to say, we all agree that if you don't approve something within 30 days, you're probably not going to do it, and we're going to cancel the request. Yes, great, we can deal with it.
Yeah, that's right. And I suppose, you know, the value of these reports is, you know, it's easy to put a report together that says how many requests, you know, pat ourselves on the back, what did we do? But the challenge is, how do you actually extract some data that talks about the issues, the underlying issues that you've got, that if you can, you know, whack those on the head, you're going to have a huge...
Well, same with SLAs. I mean, quite often I see people doing, say, service requests, and they don't want to start their SLA until the manager's approved it. So I can request whatever I like, but my first step is my manager needs to approve that. And then IT get it, or whoever in the business gets it, and then fulfill the request. So we measure the time there. That's nice to say, but the person, you know, doesn't care. They ring up and say, you know, I put this request in 3 weeks ago, and what's going on? Well, your manager still hasn't approved it, so we're within SLA. Our clock hasn't even started yet. You know, great comfort to them, isn't it? Yeah,
that's a good point. There's one more chart that I want to look at because we're nearly at the end of time. Now, this is a chart that we added to compared to last month, and this is in incidents, and it's a chart that sort of connects up all the elements of classification, the affected computers, the impacted service and category, because one of the things that people were asking from the last session was some better granularity on, well, if it's an impacted service, well, what is that service? How does it relate to other elements of the incident? So what I've done is linked all these up so that, we can have a look at if it's an enterprise application, well then how does that relate back through the classifications that we use and other elements of the service request. So, any of these elements we can click through, and it helps us sort of just join the dots on what may be problem elements. So, one of the things is always sort of reviewing your lists. So lists that you use for classification and resolution. So, whether they're working for you or whether they're not. And, importantly, the use of business services, because, it still surprises me how many people haven't gone and configured up business services for use in their platform. I mean, what do you see?
Yeah, some people have really embraced it and are using it very, very well. Some are sort of using it, and some don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
And it's a shame when they don't know what it is, they start trying to achieve what it's meant to do in other ways, like ending up with a classification system that gets out of control. And because that's how they had a previous tool and that's how it used to work, so they want it to work the same way. You've got to look at the tool and what the features are for it and say, it doesn't matter how you get to the end of the line, it's a question of getting there the right way. And there's a certain way to use this tool, and business services is certainly one of them. Related CIs, affected CIs, and using the tool for the features it has and correctly means that your data coming out the end is far more better for analysis and usable and works very nicely with tools like this. Try and twist it into something like an archaic classification model, and you're not going to get the good results at the end. It's going to be messy, you're going to be dissatisfied with the tool, management's not going to see the results they want, or they ask you a question and suddenly you can't get those answers because it's too difficult to pull it and cut it a different way. Use it correctly with business services, classifications correctly, even the impacts and things like that against your business service. Is this a tier 1 service, a tier 2, gold, silver, platinum, things like that, because then we can reach into that, bring that back and say, show me our gold services, show me our platinum services, and what makes up a platinum service, what hardware infrastructure supports that, how many incidents were against our platinum service as opposed to our bronze service. So that stuff becomes very, very doable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, we're at 29 minutes, so we should wrap up. Time flies. Look, I hope you've gotten some value out of that. We've looked at how you can start using PBI. I think it's a great reporting tool and very easy for everyone to take up. But I hope we've been able to illustrate the importance of drilling down into some really more specific data points and trying to expose issues within your processes, issues within your configuration that, if you can address them, that you'll make, big step change improvements in your service desk operation, your service delivery out to your customers. Certainly send through your feedback. We had great feedback from our last session. I'd encourage you to ask any questions, any elements that you like us to bring in for our next one. And look forward to seeing you then. Hope you can join us. So we'll catch you later.
All right, thank you.